Hey, welcome to the 60th episode of the Golf Podcast. As always, I have Mike here with me. Mike, how's it going?
It's going well. It's still cold up here, but feeling good. Got the swing intact. Can't wait to get out there, Frank.
I'll tell you what, can't wait to get out there. That's an understatement. I was thinking about this the other day, Mike. Now, I know we people can't feel too sorry for us because the whole country is cold right now. But here in the Northeast, I think the last time we were on the course was probably around October. Right? And with a foot or two of snow still out there and those temperatures as cold as it is, I got to think we're not going to be out on the course until April. So if that's the case, you're looking at 6 months without being able to play on the course.
Yeah, it's tough to think about. The simulator doesn't really do it justice. I love swinging. I love the fact that we got in there and we played in 18 holes. We banged it out in an hour and a half. And, it felt good. It felt good to really start swinging the club, but 6 months without being out on the course. I don't know. I hope the game transitions out there when we get out. I think it's going to be May 1, to be honest with you.
Yeah, so. That would be something. But I tell you what, thank goodness that we do have the simulator, because without that, I would be so rusty. I mean, we've talked about it before in previous episodes, like the importance of some of the different off-season things that you can do and just to keep your game limber, because to try to get back into it after all that is something that's just going to be, it's a challenge if you don't have some access to being able to swing, because it's too cold to even swing out in the out at the range. So you really have to have something. But it's amazing. So anyway, last episode, we talked about 5 on-course practice techniques. These are great techniques you can use as you start to transition your practice to the course. Today, we've got another great topic coming for you, and this is going to be how to avoid the 3-putt. I mean, the 3-putt, Mike, can you think of anything that's much more demoralizing and just a score killer than the 3-putt?
Yeah, I'm going to say the 4-putt, but no, you're absolutely right. Nothing like getting on the green. You feel like you got a great chance to make birdie or par, and all of a sudden you bogey or double bogey because you just can't get that first putt close enough. We always talk about getting the first putt close enough, and I know we're going to talk about that today.
And you know what? We've seen it happen at all levels. I was just rewatching a couple of clips of Rory. He 4-putted that one time from just inside, I think it was 10 feet. Look, there's going to be those mental flops, and there's always going to be those outliers. But we're going to talk about a couple different ways that you can kind of really limit that as much as you can. But let's just talk really quickly about how easily a 3-putt can sneak up on you. First of all, Mike, let's say you're about 21 feet out, which is something that happens periodically. You're on the green, you're on the dance floor, so to speak, but you just didn't quite get it close to the pin. Now, just a little bit of a misstep, was a little bit of a mistake there, and you could end up being, leaving it short, going a little bit long, whatever it may be, and you leave yourself a 6-foot putt. Now you got a couple problems. First of all, a 6-foot putt, you don't drain them every time. And second of all, now you got that pressure, because what are you thinking about in the back of your mind? I can't 3-putt this. Most times when you see those types of long putts, you're walking up to the green thinking, the last thing I want to do is 3-putt this. And we've talked about that before, about setting that mental example for yourself and not having that where you're thinking, what bad is going to happen, because your mind is going to replicate that. But how many times does that happen? I mean, it just kind of sneaks up on you. It's not always when you're starting off with a 80-foot long putt and you think that, if I get it there 3, I'm happy. A lot of times it's just a matter of that first putt setting you up for a challenging second shot. Mike, you agree with me there?
Yeah, because on the amateur level, on our level, we're not attacking pins like the pros. So our approach shots, odds are they're going to be 20, 25 feet away. We're just happy if we get on the green, right? So, we're going to be faced with this a lot more than the pros are. So, when I take the notes on the scorecard of putts per round, and, that's something that I like to focus on. I don't want to see many 3s on there. And I've got a bunch of little drills that I do, and I'm happy to share them tonight.
Okay, yeah, we'll definitely get into that. And I think the first thing that you started to touch upon is the first tip that I want to kind of dive into, and that's just keeping those stats. Because one thing that's very important is, first of all, if you don't know your stats, this is what's with all parts of your game, but let's just talk about this one area. If you don't know and you don't establish a baseline, you're not going to know, A, if you're improving or where you need to improve. So if you just took let's say you just took a big look at your game and you thought, I have a lot of 3-putts on there. Well, you may think, well, I got to work on my putting, but you might not realize, well, what is there other aspects to it? Is it that your approach shots are where you really need to work? So if there's going to be 2 stats that you're going to keep track of, and if it was only 2 just for this one thing, I would say start with you want to start with number of putts. Just keep it. It's very easy to do if you're doing it on a manual scorecard. If you're using one of the apps, most scorekeeping apps now will give you a spot where you can keep track of your putts, but you're going to need to know how many putts you're having per round and per hole. Very easy thing to do. But the other thing is keep track of your first putt distance. We hear pros talk about this a lot of pros who are teaching professionals. We've had a couple come on the show. They've mentioned the same type of thing. It's a very important thing to know because, like Mike was saying, the first thing you might realize is, well, if my first putt is always 20 feet plus, well, then I need to work on my approach shots. I need to work on my chipping around the green. I need to work on my bunker work around the green. I've got to work on my wedges and all those other approach shots to start giving myself a better chance by getting the ball a little bit closer to the hole. So that's going to be a real key thing there. And you don't need to be too super accurate with this. I'm not asking you to pace off every single putt, just an estimate, eyeball it. Does it look like it's approximately 10 foot, 20 foot, 30 foot, beyond that, whatever it may be, and just kind of mark that down. Again, you could do it on the scorecard. If you keep a yardage book, whatever you want to do, just write that little number for each hole and you can get a look at it. That's going to first and foremost establish a baseline. You're going to know what is my average first putt distance, what is my average putts per round, my average putts per hole, all easy things to calculate as long as you're keeping those stats. And then you can kind of see, as you work these things into your practice routines, we've talked many times about practicing with a purpose. As you work these things in your practice routines, and we're going to give you some drills in a minute, that is where you're going to say, am I seeing results? Am I seeing my first putt distance going down? Am I seeing my number of putts going down? Mike, have you ever kept track of these stats for yourself?
Yeah, all the time. They're very helpful. Absolutely.
Without a doubt. And I do the same. I've been doing it for quite some time. The first putt distance is sometimes a little bit harder to do, but like I said, you can just estimate it, just throw it on the card and get a feel for it.
Yep.
Because like I said, that the chances, putting, it's all percentages, it's all math. You see it when we watch the PGA Tour, when they'll show players a certain distance and they'll say the make percentage from that. The further you are, obviously, the lower that make percentage. But what we're going to talk about here is different ways that you can kind of make sure that you're not 3-putting it, even if you do start from that long distance. Okay, so that kind of leads to the second thing, and that is just working really, really stringently on getting your ability to read the green down. Okay, one thing that's might surprise you, but it might not if you really reflect back on your game. Most times, this is what a lot of pros say, is that most times when you miss a long putt, let's say you're putting 20, 30 feet, that range, when you miss one badly, let's say it's by 6 feet or whatever it may be, it's usually either because you left it very short or you went very long. Rarely is it that it goes 6 feet right, 6 feet left, because usually we can get an idea of that. And most golfers, even if they only do a very basic reading of the green, are standing behind the ball and they're getting that read of left to right. Okay. But it's that speed, it's that touch that a lot of us struggle with. So one thing I like to do, and we talked about this in previous episodes on putting, is get a read, go all the way around the ball, walk 360 around from the ball, the whole area. And one of the more important reads that a few amateurs, I should say, I see doing this, is reading it from the side. I like to read the putt from both sides, not from behind the ball and behind the cup, but also from the sides, because that'll give you kind of an idea of the pitch. Is it pitched, down towards the hole? Is it pitched up? And you can get a much better idea of how much you're going to need to put on or take off of it. Now, Mike, I know you definitely read the green that way. You like to go all the way around the ball, right?
Yeah, seeing it from all angles is key. Because, I feel that a 20-foot putt, we shouldn't be, even as amateurs or Frank, you and I at our level, guys at our, scoring range, we should be 2-putting every 20-foot putt. We should be leaving those first putts 2 feet short, 3 feet short, 1 foot, and we should be banging in the second putt. So, definitely do the circle around. I even like to feel it with my feet. You see a couple of guys on tour do that, like Adam Scott. He'll stand there for a little while, and it looks kind of awkward. You're watching him stand there, feel it at his feet, but he's feeling what the slope's going to be. A lot of times, with the sun and the shadows, it's hard to see which way a green is going to move. And sometimes seeing it from the side is better than front and back.
Absolutely agree. And another thing too is just taking a look at the grain. I know that's getting a little bit more advanced, whatever, but as you get a read for it, as you practice this, you'll get a better idea. Because I've had some holes that have really tricked me because it seems like you're putting uphill or vice versa, and the speed does not quite match up. And a lot of times that's because the grain is so dramatic of which direction the grass is bending, and it will either slow it down or speed it up more than you might imagine. So taking a look at that's important. And one big tip that I would say is this is the reason why you don't want to skip that practice green before you hit the first tee. The practice green is going to usually, as long as it's maintained the way most, golf courses are and should be maintained, it's going to perform in a similar way as the greens once you get out there. So that's a great way to start gauging that speed before you get out there. It might have been they got a lot of rain, or it might be that the greens were rolled or they weren't rolled. And just by lagging a few long putts on the putting green is really going to help you get that feel for what's their speed today. And just knowing that could save you. I mean, think about it. In a 20-foot putt, if you're lagging it up to put it close for a 2-putt, just something like just a slight difference in speed could mean the difference of your second putt being 6 feet or 3 feet. And the makeability, it changes dramatically in that range. Now, I've talked about this on previous episodes, and I still reiterate, you don't want your last putts to be those really long lagging putts, when you're on the practice green before you hit the tee, because again, I like to, and it's just a little tip that I've added in there before, I like to sink a lot of short putts before I go out there just because it kind of helps build confidence. The last thing in your mind is not that you've missed a bunch of putts. But a good progression, what I like to do, start with some very long lagging putts. On the practice green, start with the long ones, get a feel for it. What's the speed? Try a couple with the grain, against the grain, uphill, downhill. Try to lag them up, get them as close as you can, and then finish off by just getting, a couple 3-footers and just nailing them one after the other. That can be really important. Now, another thing that kind of leads to, and again with the practice green, but this could be before your round, or I like to do this just when you have some time to get over to the practice green, just the way you would to a driving range. Just make sure you practice like you could do it in your sleep. You practice it so much. Practice those 6-foot putts. You got to get to a point where you're so comfortable making those that even when the pressure's on, like we talked about, when you're faced with it, where it's either you make this 6-footer or you're going to end up with a 3-putt, get it to the point where it's muscle memory as much as it can, where you feel as confident and accurate as you can, and that's going to dramatically reduce your number of 3-putts. I see a lot of times where guys will practice the really long putts and then the really short ones, but that mid-range, that's where it's going to ultimately kill you, that 6 to 8 foot range. So you want to practice those as much as you can and really focus on them, really get to where you're feeling comfortable. You agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to share a drill. Can I share a drill, Frank?
Absolutely, yeah.
Because this drill has changed my life. Because I was putting, I was really bad with the putter for a while, going back a couple of years, and I was averaging about 2.5 putts a hole. And it was really bad. It was all over the place. And if you multiply it, that's 45 strokes around that I'm spending on the putting green. So what I did is I dedicated about a half hour, and hey, all our schedules are busy. So if you could find a half hour, maybe twice a week, go to the putting green, forget about the driving range. If you want to end your practice off with that's fine, or you get in the car. But take 5 balls. Usually on every practice green, there's at least 4 or 5 holes. Just hit 2 putts from each hole location, start with 10 feet. And if you make 2 putts on all 5 balls, go to the next hole. Mm-hmm. If you do 2 putts there, go to the next hole. Do not advance to the next hole unless you 2-putt all 5 balls. After you go through that, the 10-foot, you'll probably go through that quick. then start over again at 15 feet, then 20. And if you have enough time, maybe end it off at 25. The whole drill will take you about 30 minutes. Then you can go on with the rest of your day. But what you're learning there, Frank, you're just learning how to build the muscle memory of your stroke on the green. And that stroke is going to take you a long way, and it's going to shave so many strokes off your game. You are going to be so pleasantly surprised with how many putts you have after a round by just doing that drill over and over. Do it before the season. Right now, preseason, if you're up in the Northeast where we are, do it during the season. Do it after the season. Just continue to do it, and you'll be one heck of a putter.
And what I love about that, too, is it simulates, like we talked about, simulates the pressure. I mean, I could say this a million times because it's so important. It's not just a mindless drill. A lot of times I see guys just throw a couple balls down from whatever distance they want to practice, and they're just putting mindlessly. When you do that pressure, like you said, where you don't move on to the next sequence until you've made it, you're going to start to feel it. Well, I got to focus. I have to make this. And that's what it's like out on the course. This is why, again, we see that disparity where people say, I putt so well when I'm, on the putting green, but then I putt terrible when I'm out here, because they're not feeling the same thing. You're not feeling the same pressure. You start to get a lot tenser in the muscles and everything. I mean, we're not going to get into the fundamentals of putting here. We've covered that extensively on Golficity, and we'll get into it more, I'm sure, in the future. But everything that goes in that sequence gets stiffer when you're not focused or whatever it may be. So that's really important, and I like that. And the other thing that I like that you're saying there is, anytime we really think about it and quantify it, you said like 45 strokes. It's so amazing. Think about it like this. At max, we've said it before, off the tee, you may hit your driver in an entire round. You may hit it 14 times, depending on how many par threes there are, depending on how long the par fours are. Yet we see people practicing that constantly, practicing the driver. But what you're not seeing is that, that's 14 strokes versus 45 that you're leaving on the greens. This is that low-hanging fruit we talk about, especially for, newer golfers who want to lower their score quickly. This is where you want to focus. Become that short game guy who's just great on the greens, and you're going to start to see where your scores are and your handicap is just coming down nicely. Another very similar practice, and pretty much a lot of them are going to be structured the same way, but another similar practice drill to that, one that I like a lot, is just, setting up a nice little ring around the cup on the practice green. You could do it by just putting a couple tees in, be mindful of not, messing up the thing, but just putting that ring in there within a very makeable range, like a foot to 2 feet, where you're going to be making those putts, and then just start with those long putts and just try to lag it and get it in that ring every time. That'll really help you get used to the speed. And we have a video on there that we found on YouTube that just shows another similar practice technique, like Mike said, just making sure you putt about 4, 5, 6 balls from a certain distance, maybe it's 20 feet, and then go up to them and then try to make each one as the second one. So you're simulating exactly what's happening out on the course. So I'll link to that in the show notes for sure, because that's going to be one that's going to be, it's going to really help, because you're going to get out there and you're going to be doing that. But most importantly, again, what's going to come down to, if you really want to improve in this area, it's the time commitment to practicing. So, if you're hitting the range constantly, and if they have, if you're practicing at the course, a lot of places or whatever it may be, they've got a practice screen, just split that time up, split it up wisely. Even if you say, I only have 45 minutes to practice, say, no matter what, not touching it, that's going to be part of my practice is going to be, 15, 20 minutes on the practice screen. The rest of the time can be spent hitting balls on the range. Because if you put the time in, you're going to do better.
Yeah, that's a solid point, Frank. And, I'm a big believer in when you practice this game, a lot of us, and I'm guilty of it too, we'll go to the range, we'll fire through the bag, 3-iron all the way up, and then we'll go to the putting green, we'll drop a couple of balls down, and then we'll leave. But I love the idea of kind of piecing this game together. One day it's putting. The next day you go back to that putting green. I'm not saying the next day, because we all can't do that. But, the next time you're there, it's just drop a couple of balls on the fringe of a chipping and just chip for a half hour and do the same thing. Maybe you chip to a 2 foot and then go up and putt it to finish it out. Simulate that you're in the middle of a tournament, or you're in the middle of something. Just like you said, add that pressure. It's really going to take your game a long way.
Absolutely. And yeah, we don't all have the convenience to practice all the time. So that's when take your limited practice and make sure you're allocating that time towards the right things that are going to save you the most strokes. And B, see if you can make a commitment. I mean, challenge yourself. It's a little bit late now for a New Year's resolution, but, challenge yourself and say, I'm going to spend 30 minutes a week, just a half hour a week. Maybe on my way home from work, I'm going to stop by the course and just you focus that time on putting. Just focus on these types of drills we're talking about. And I'm going to give that, a month and just see what happens. Now, because you're keeping your stats like we talked about, see how that affects your stats. See how many putts per round you're coming in at. Because, right there, like I said, that's the quickest way to lower your score. A putt, is the same, counts exactly the same on the scorecard as a drive. A putt might go 3 feet and a drive might go 250, 300 yards, whatever it may be. Doesn't matter. The scorecard doesn't know the difference. So just go out there, make that commitment, and see what it does for you, because I think that's going to really help. And just eliminating these 3 putts, it also add a ton to your confidence, because no one loves walking up to that next tee box after they've 3-putt. And again, try to keep that positive mental attitude. So many times I've done it myself. I get wrapped up in it where you're thinking, I put it on, it's par 3, let's say. I put it on the green, but it rolled to the back. I'm walking up to the green. I'm thinking, I got about 20 feet in front of me here. I can't 3-putt it. I'll just kill myself if I 3-putt it. You're just thinking that. But the whole time, you just don't realize that you're sending your mind such negativity that you're going to 3-putt it. Instead, just go in there with that focused attention of where you want it to do. Just replicate in your mind that practice. Say, I'm going to, read it from all sides, going back to what we talked about it, read that putt, give it the time it takes to really get a good read on it, read it from the sides, look at the how that's going to go as far as speed, uphill, downhill, whatever it may be, put a good stroke on it and say, I'm going to put it there within, that 3-4 foot range, ideally even less where you can tap it in. And then just say after that, I'm just going to settle into that muscle memory like Mike was talking about. I've been here before. I've practiced this. I can make this happen, and just put it in, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I love the idea of just simply lining up those 20 footers and telling myself, you don't need to make this in. Just get it close. Right. A lot of, we're programmed to want to make that. We want to make that 20 footer. We want that birdie. But, in reality, just get it close, go and tap it in or knock in the 1 footer, 2 footer, and just move on.
Yeah. If the long one goes in, it's gravy.
Yeah, exactly.
Other than that, you're just setting yourself up with a good read to give yourself an opportunity to put it in. And as I said, every foot you're closer is lowering your percentage of, I'm raising your make percentage, lowering your miss percentage. So that's important. So again, I'm going to link to all this in the show notes. You can get to that by going to golficity.com/episode 60. There we'll have the notes we talked about today, some of the drills, some videos, so you can take a look at all that. So Mike, that's everything I have. Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, that's it. I mean, lower your score. I promise you.
Absolutely. Okay, so as always, you can check us out on the web by going to golficity.com. You can also connect with Mike and I directly by emailing us at podcast@golficity.com. We love hearing from you guys. That's where we find out a lot of the different topics that you want us to cover here, and we're going to be going through more and more as the season's heating up, and hopefully Mike and I are getting back out there. We've got another couple of great interviews coming your way in the next couple of weeks. We've got some couple different teaching professionals, some different guys who are going to come on, just give you some tips, and you can take that and just each week focus on something new that you can practice on. And in the meantime, if you're snowed in like we are, we've got plenty of stuff on Golficity where you can read through, and I think there's over 300 different instructional articles on there now, so you can kind of go through and just look for those areas of the game, like I said, where you want to improve. But let us know too. We want to know how you're doing. You can leave a comment on the episode, or you can email us directly and let us know, how are you doing right now? Those stats you're keeping. What is your first putt distance? And have you seen that come down by practicing what we're talking about here? And hopefully you will. So that's everything we have. Like I said, we'll be back again next week. In the meantime, good luck out there. Hopefully you're hitting the course, and we'll see you soon.